Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christine Era.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Hello, everyone. And I'm Steve Bousquet with Green Profit Academy. And today we have a super special guest, a good friend of mine. I've known him for 20 years, Erich Kolb. Erich has been in the green industry for, I don't know, how long, Erich?
Too long, but started my first company in 1993. Like you and a lot of folks, mowed grass, did landscaping jobs as a kid before that. So since the mid 80s. Wow.
Right. So a long time. And you and I met, we met at through a kind of a peer group, coaching group that we were in for many years together. And that gentleman has since retired and sold off that group. And but we spent a lot of years together and made a lot of progress. And one of the goals I wanted to have by having you on the show was, sharing some of your experiences. You sold a business. You started another business in a whole nother state. And then you kind of made another, transition into leaving that business and going to work for a franchise. And a lot of emotional decisions over the years, a lot of struggle. You and I had spent many hours on the phone trying to figure out marketing and hiring and pricing and cash flow. And, just getting through all that together, we kind of have a kindred spirit that developed over the years with all those challenges. And Erich and I we had this saying, landscaping is a hard way to make a hard living.
Yes, it sure is. It's an honest way to make a living for sure. But yes, we had many hallway conversations, many very genuine conversations about challenges in our business. You helped me tremendously. It's always appreciative with you and everybody else that was in that group. Myself, how I got there and how a lot of people get to that point is you're kind of on an island. You don't know what you don't know. You think you're running a good business. You're working harder, but you're just not getting anywhere. And so that led me to that group with you, I think, in 2006. So how I got into the industry, I can't say that I just loved landscaping per se, but I was in high school and I wanted a car, specifically a Jeep, and my dad said, go get a job. And so this was before I could even drive. I had to go down and fill out the worker permit. And my dad would drive me to the landscaper's house and I would ride in the truck with him, or then we'd meet at the shopping center. My parents had to pick me up after work. This was before mobile phones and all that good stuff. And we did new home installations. And so that's kind of my first landscaping job. Prior to that, of course, I mowed yards in the neighborhood. I did painting, odd jobs, had an auto detailing business. So I was always hustling. Went to school and graduated with a business degree. Although some days you wouldn't know it. Some days I questioned that. And not to knock my college studies, but some of the things you learn there just don't teach you what you're going to find out in small business.
Right. Even if it's a small business course, I had an entrepreneurial class, I had accounting, I had marketing. But when you're running your own small business and it's your, dollars on the line, your livelihood on the line, it's not as easy as that textbook quiz at the back of the chapter.
Oh, for sure. So when I got out of school, it was not the best job market. And I went around and put on some suits and ties and looked for a few jobs. And then I just realized I could make more money doing landscaping again. So I worked for a person in landscape maintenance instead of installation. Actually worked for an interior landscaping company. So kind of all facets of landscaping I was involved in, and then decided to go out on my own. Always had an urge to be a business owner. And so I guess another thing we left out, though, I had a business partner to start out with. And so one of the things is we started that business with, I tell everybody $40, but really, I guess it was only 20 because I had 20 and he had 20. So back in the old days, you had to actually walk into the bank to open up an account. We opened up an official account. The lady behind the desk asked us, well, how much money do you want to put in it? We looked at each other and he's like, I have 20, you have 20. And there we go. So then we grew that business, a lot of hard knocks, a lot of lessons. You know, I say I'm the night watchman at the shed of lessons because I have learned a lot of lessons. But we grew that business. Then we got to a point where we're not in college working for beer money anymore. We need a plan. We need families to support. And it just really wasn't working. I ended up buying him out. So, all the equipment and trucks that we had, I got to buy them over again. So that was a lesson that I learned because I really was not prepared for all that was involved. And we had to go through that process to figure out a valuation, something that was fair. I think the crowning achievement of that is that he was my best friend before we started business, and we're still really good friends today, which is not often the case.
Not often the case at all. So how long were you guys in business for together?
So our official start was 1993, and we were in business until 2006, the year that I joined the networking peer group with you.
Right. Oh, wow. So 13 years.
Yes.
I mean, that's a long time. 13 years is a long time in business. That's a lot of quarters. So what was the conversation that you guys had where you said, you know what, this isn't going to work?
So like you've mentioned before and can be very common, if you do good work and you do it at a low price, you get lots of business. And then you start adding people and start adding equipment, and you kind of build on this house of cards. And that's where we were. Our top line, we were growing and growing, and we went from that $40 to our top line was right at $1 million. And we were doing, as I call, the 3-ring circus. We were landscape maintenance. We were landscape installation. We were doing builder work, pavers, ponds, patios, just everything. But if you look to the bottom of a very confused P&L, there wasn't much there. So we realized something had to change. And I think we were 50-50 partners. We were both the same age. We had not established kind of a hierarchy or a specialty or, hey, Eric, you do sales and Brad, you do production, or vice versa. So we didn't really identify our roles, and that made it hard. And so ultimately, he ended up getting a good offer, prior to the downturn in construction, but he had a really good offer to go work with the construction company. And so that's what we ended up doing. And then I joined the group with you, and I said, I've got to figure this thing out. I've got to learn how to make this a business.
And so the business split up. You had to rebuy the equipment that you already paid for. So You had a business that wasn't very profitable that you had to buy.
Correct.
Because you didn't have a buyout ahead of time, which is understandable. A lot of people don't. And so what was the biggest lessons that you took away from that partnership or that phase of your business life?
From that phase, I think we were definitely caught up in the big shiny. If we were in a pickup truck and I had our mowers and we saw the big dump truck with the Kubota or Bobcat go by, we said, oh, if we can just get that, we have it made. And then it was another trailer. And if we could just get this work, if we could get the big apartment complex, if we could get the big, builder. And so we made those, I think, what are classic mistakes that a lot of people do. We did not understand when we bought that equipment, the effect it would have on our checkbook. So again, the shed of lessons of, and you've preached it many times of, to avoid taxes, your accountant says, go buy something. And you buy something, but you buy it and make payments and you don't pay cash. And then the next year rolls around and now you're same position, except, only worse. So I would say some of the mistakes that we made was not really having a good accounting person for our company. We bounced around with 3 or 4 because we just didn't know. We didn't have roles identified, and we probably didn't sit down and think about how we wanted to grow. Let's just grow. Right.
So not having a good accountant, the big shiny, buying the equipment, taking the tax deductions. You do that every year. Next thing you know, you have too much month at the end of the money because, a lot of people don't realize that they're paying taxes on the payment amounts that they're making, even though they solve the tax problem today by taking accelerated depreciation. Every time they make a payment next year and for the next 4 years or however long that liability is, they're paying taxes on that. And it's kind of a hidden tax. And the accountants will tell you not to do it, but the equipment people who are selling that, take the accelerated depreciation, they're not telling you that. So yeah, that's a big error a lot of people make. I think we've all fallen for that until we've learned. So the accountant, the big shiny, that's a big lesson for sure. And so you buy your partner out, and now you are the sole owner of your business. And
yes.
Then what happened then?
Well, one of the first things that happened is we had a less than ideal shop space. So in that first year, we had at least 3 break-ins in addition to break-ins we had previous. And that included stealing our Bobcat trailers, vandalizing our dump truck. So then I was told by my insurance agent that they were going to drop us.
Oh.
So now I have to go look for a new shop, which was a significantly increase in rent. So there I am I'm paying out my old partner on a 3-year term. So that's taking up cash, and we're increasing our shop space rental because we have to. So it was in a bind. It was not a real comfortable, warm, fuzzy place to be. So I immediately had to turn the thing around to make some profit.
Right.
I had to make profit, not to give myself a huge salary. I had to make profit to survive.
Was that shop behind the shopping mall place down the hill a little bit?
So that was the new and improved shop.
Okay, that was the new and improved shop.
Yes, that was the new and improved shop. Yes.
Yeah. And I had visited you when you were renting, there was looked like an old kind of camp and sheds and stuff.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
All right. That was the previous.
Shop.
Okay,
yes.
That was the previous shop. All right. So that shop was pretty decent. The second one that was all fenced in, had a nice building. Yep.
Yeah, and that worked, but it was scary.
How much was that a month to rent?
That was $2,500 a month.
Whew. And what year was that?
So that started in 2007 until 2016.
Gotcha.
That was a significant increase for me. And along with the payments, I bought my business partner out, and I was paying him $3,000 a month for 3 years.
So $5,500, $3,000 for the partner and $2,500 for the rent, $5,500 a month in payment right there. Yep. So $66,000 right there, right off the top.
Yeah.
Before anything else.
That's right. And that kind of ate into any possibility of hiring kind of a middle manager or paying kind of an ops manager. And so then what happened there is we had a good team, but it was just kind of really instead of your organizational chart looking like a Christmas tree, mine was like an upside down T. It was just straight down to the bottom with the field crew. And so, but that's what we had to do.
Right.
And then, I know some folks listening may not have even been in business then, but then 2009, 2010 came. And so,
ugly.
yes,
Painful.
Painful. So, as you know, in our networking group, I was nicknamed Builder Boy for a while because we were tied into new construction.
Right.
And we took a big hit on that. We went from a staff of 15 down to a staff of 5 and trying to find stuff for them to do.
Right.
Because we had probably 30 or 40% of our business tied up in that segment of the industry.
Right. In the builder work.
Another lesson learned.
Another lesson learned. So what did you do to make it through that 2009? So if you don't remember, in 2007, there was a housing bubble because of these really bad mortgages. So that was the leading kind of indicator for that, was the bad mortgage default. And then the lagging indicator was everything stopped and people were defaulting on their homes. So not only were people losing their homes, nothing new was being built. And I had actually done a home. We did one home, new home that year. And they did not pay us the final payment for about $3,600. And the company that had sold the contractor the material for that job ended up repoing that house. They ended up owning that house because he didn't pay anybody. And he couldn't sell it, and so they had a lot of bad mortgages. So it put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. So what did you do to make it through it, Erich?
So we kind of seen the writing on the wall a little bit before then. Of course, being in the group and getting to learn from folks like yourself, I knew I wanted to kind of diversify and get out of that because in that line of work, we're really beholden to their schedule. It's tough to plan. It's tough to plan ahead. And so I was working towards kind of more of the reoccurring revenue model. I enjoyed lawn care, enjoyed irrigation, specifically the service. So we were trying to build that up. And we did, which did allow us to keep staff on, move more to maintenance. We had to look at all our maintenance contracts because at one time we were doing them just a bulk price for the month, everything included, but we were doing too much for the money we were making. We were giving away services and it was not profitable. So I think the homework that I had done between 2006 to 2009 prepared us to weather the storm. It wasn't comfortable, but we survived. And there was a lot of companies that just did not survive.
A lot of large companies that didn't make it. I remember there was a couple of large companies down in Florida that didn't make it even to 2009. It hit them hard. It hit them fast. And, they went from either 150 to 200 employees down to 0 and gone in about 6 to 7 months. And I was at the Technology Conference last August. And there was a story someone shared. Their dad, they had relied on a lot of building out in Ohio, and it just stopped. And the dad, he almost lost everything. And the sons came in and they kind of kept it afloat and brought it back. And, now they're not running on debt. They kept growing and growing, and growth is really expensive, and financing. So they put the house of cards, like you said earlier, it was pretty ugly. So you make it out of that, 2009, 2010 debacle. If you want to know more about that, there's a movie called The Big Short that does a really good job of explaining the whole thing. The Big Short is a pretty good movie that kind of goes more into the technical aspects of what happened in that 2007 to 2010 housing crisis. So you made it through it, and now it's 2013. What's going on?
So 2013, we continue to add to our lawn care accounts, build that up, kind of sticking with the maintenance services. We've got our pricing better aligned with what we're doing. And so we actually, and if you recall from the networking group where we had to post our numbers, we really had to, there was no sidetracking anything. It was all out there. But for me, my top line actually went down. So the first year that I was in that networking group, I had the highest gross sales that I achieved over the next 7 or 8 years, but I had the lowest profit. So we actually increased our bottom line while decreasing our sales. And that was from the lessons learned of, tracking the hours, tracking the costs, right sizing the crews, not sending, too many people on a maintenance crew, not giving away services, all those things. That's really what helped us get us through. And so we were going along pretty good. I'd paid off my business partner, making some decent profit, still working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, weekends, had issues with people, so once I kind of got my P&L in order and that thing, then I had to go back and learn more about the people aspect. What do I need to do to attract better talent, to keep better talent? The other thing for me specifically, though, I was not living my dream. So my business was growing, but it was not fulfilling one of the big needs and wants that I had wanted all my life. And that was specifically, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. I had my business there. It was a great place to grow up, great place to live, but I wanted to be at the coast. And so, I started kind of thinking and planning how I could do that. And I think what was interesting, and I think what a lot of people didn't understand at the time, and I can understand how they wouldn't understand it, was I just had this urge, this need, and it wasn't just for vacation. It just wasn't for a week. My heart was at the coast, and that's where I wanted to be. And so between 2013 and 2016, I worked on a plan to ultimately sell my business and move to the coast. And I can say a lot of lessons were learned there. Again, I went through business brokers. I heard a lot of naysayers, but it was not an overnight plan. And it was a 3 to 5 year plan. So I would say whether you're thinking about shutting your business down as you're getting close to retirement, or maybe you're preparing your business to sell, you don't just wake up and think, I'm going to do that next month. There's a lot of planning that goes into it.
Yeah. Or even this year, I bought businesses, and it typically takes that business owner has been looking to sell that for at least a year. And then, it can take up to another year to sell that. I mean, probably the quickest business I've ever bought was because the gentleman had died. We worked in the same exact town.
Okay.
I knew his wife. I had accounts next to his account, and we did the same exact services. So back then it was easy, but other times it's taken over a year. Yeah. And if you're selling it, you have to get evaluations, you have to get all the money lined up, you have to get, all your ducks in a row. It takes a lot of work. So your dream is to live down by the coast, which you are living down by the coast now in South Carolina. And you have to line up and sell your business. So you started a business, then you bought a partner out, and now you're getting ready to sell your business. And that's why I wanted you on the show, because, you've done a lot of business things that, so I haven't done all those things. And some people are thinking about doing that and thinking about, how do you go about doing that? Selling a business, buying out a partner, moving to another state. So you moved to South Carolina to be down by the coast, and then you started a new business.
A new business, yeah. Yes, I fell and bumped my head. I was a glutton for punishment. No, I did start a new business, again, in the green industry. This time I had narrowed my focus. We did lawn care and irrigation. And on the irrigation part, specifically maintenance and service. So where previously I had installed hundreds of irrigation systems, now the focus was on service and maintenance. So, there was a lot of thought that went into it, a lot of conversations, a lot of advice from people like yourself. I guess I pumpkin planned before I actually read the book. So maybe, people like you were giving me little tidbits of information. But for me, I really enjoyed the lawn care, the weed control, fertilization side. I liked the challenge there. And I enjoyed the irrigation service, the mechanical part of that, the problem solving part. And in our industry, those are some of the higher margin services. So when I moved, I decided to give up the mowers. And just for me personally, I had done the mowers, I'd run the mower crews, and I said, I'm not going to go that direction this time. My thought was, if I can provide a higher margin service, I'll be able to recruit and keep people and pay people better. And so I came here, started with zero and built up. And that was certainly tough because I gave up an office manager. I took over that role again. I was sales, I was production, I was fixing the sprayer. I was, doing it all. But we built that up and probably made half the mistakes in half the time that I did the first go around.
That's an improvement, right?
So it was an improvement.
Yeah.
But
and starting a business up, when you actually starting a new business up, when you know more about business, is a lot of work, because then you know the right way to set things up and how to set your 5 functions up: marketing, sales, deliverables, finance, and people. And when you're first starting a business and you don't really know anything, it's way easier because you're not setting it up correctly. You're not taking the time to, make sure you're crossing all your T's and dotting your I's. But when after you have some experience, it's a lot of work. Just starting Green Profit Academy, Christine and I put a ton of effort into starting that up, standing operating procedures, who assignments of roles and charts and who's going to do what and what are the expectations. And, we just, back in the day, just went to work. And so it definitely is a lot more work starting a new business. So you start this business up and tell me the history of the business.
So it was Sea Green Lawn Care and Irrigation. We landed here with 0 customers. My first invoice to a customer was in May of 2016. So backing up a little bit, I sold my business in Raleigh December 31st, January 1st of 2015, 2016. And I worked with that company for 8 weeks, helping them with the transition. And then after that, of course, the equipment that I had and the stuff, I still had to bring it down here, get set up. There's a lot of things you have to do just because I moved across state lines. As you said before, you just went to work and you didn't even know. And now you know these things. So it's like, okay, I'm incorporated in this state, but I have to fill out the paperwork for this state. And I have to get the payroll set up for both states, because what if I hire somebody from North Carolina and then I hire somebody from South Carolina? So all those administrative things, that you had to figure out. Additionally, I went from an environment where we serviced 80% cool season grass and 20% warm season grass to 100% warm season grass. So only though 160 miles away, it's very close, but worlds apart in the turf and, what you're growing and what you're caring for and the expectations, because everybody that's here comes from a cool season market.
Oh, so, right. They're up north and they're going down south. Correct.
So most of my customers, I did a study looking at the phone numbers of my customers, and less than 40% of my customers had a local area code, which tells you 2 things. One is that nobody has a house phone anymore. And 2, that all my customers were coming from other areas. It was Connecticut. It was New Jersey. It's Pennsylvania. It's Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia. So all those are cool season markets, and they move down here and don't have a clue, and their expectation of when the grass is green is, totally different. So now you're again involved in that customer education at another level. And I had to educate myself too. But so that was a big challenge for sure.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about warm season grasses. Are you growing Bermuda or zoysia?
So that was another thing. In the Raleigh market, you'll see a lot of Bermuda and zoysia grass. And here, 80% is centipede. Which is
centipede. I don't know.
Centipede is the oddball of turf. I mean, we could go down a big discussion on turf, but that's not what we're here for. But it's the odd mix. But what that also means is in your setups in your trucks, you just can't have one tank to go out and do all your yards, because we dealt with 4 varieties of warm season grass, and they all had different needs.
I think they like different amounts of nitrogen at different times of the year. And
yeah. Why make it easy on myself?
Yeah. Go where they need 4 tanks. So let's back up to when you sold the business. So you decide to sell the business.
Correct.
And you're going to move down south, fulfill your dream. What were the feelings you were going through as you were selling your business? Were you excited? Were you happy about it? Was it bittersweet? What was your one regret?
So it was all those emotions. It was bittersweet. It was really hard to leave my customers, and I had to really kind of get over that fact that, yes, my customers liked me. Yes, they loved me, but they'll find somebody else to take care of their yard.
Yeah.
It was not hard for me to change and narrow my focus, at least in my mind. One of the biggest temptations, though, was when I first came here and I did not have a lot of work, and somebody called and said, "Will you mow my lawn too?" And you're looking at your checkbook, you're thinking about you're looking at your income statement, and the temptation is to say yes, and you have to hold the line. That was very difficult, but we did it.
I remember that conversation years ago. Yep. And I think there was another time when we were talking, you were putting in sod.
Yes. And, we all do those things when we first start.
Yeah,
I mean, when I first started, I did chimney sweeping. I loaded firewood. I mean, the guy at the funeral home we were maintaining needed some help carrying caskets. Anything to pay the bills.
Yeah.
But as you grow and mature, you really have to have a plan. You have to have a niche, and you need to stick with it.
Yes.
Or else you just get drugged all over the place.
Yeah, you really do. We used to do parking lot sweeping and cleanup, really more parking lot cleanup. We didn't have a sweeper truck, but we used to have to empty all the garbage cans, and they were disgusting. People would show up and bring their home trash and put it in these strip mall garbage cans.
Oh yeah.
Some disgusting stuff, just dump out ashtrays. Yeah. We've all done stuff like that. But I remember when you were like, yeah, I could pick up some mowing, and you're like, I'm not going to do it. And I was like, don't do it. Not that there's anything wrong with mowing. It's just that was not the vision and mission of the company. There are people that are doing really good in mowing, because they understand their numbers. They have a really focused, marketplace, and they kind of make sure that they're niching who they're mowing for. And so they're doing okay with it. But regardless of what you do, you have to niche and you have to kind of claim your expertise in the marketplace. So you sell your business, and with some apprehension, I'm sure. And I think the guy who bought it did okay with it, and he kept it going, or at least took care of most of your customers. And then you moved down south, you started a new business, and you're moving. Not only did you leave your business, you left the town that you were super familiar with. You're moving into a new community, starting a new business. And I think you joined the Rotary. And did you join the chamber too?
We did the Rotary, did the chamber. So really had to focus on the marketing and, building new relationships because, yes, I was in a new town. I mean, I knew some people here. My wife and I had been coming to the area for years, but it wasn't like I just had a full book of business.
Right.
So, and then because we were offering limited services and not the full landscape, one of the things that I could do in this business that not so well in the other businesses, I could market to some other landscapers who were folks that were doing mowing, but they didn't do the spraying, or folks that were doing landscaping plant installations, but needed irrigation. So we did, look to market to them as well. Look to work with property managers and started that relationship. That was something too that, initially when you go, that's a whole nother level of insurance if you're going to go on those properties. And so then you have to weigh out the cost, and we did that. And another factor here is there's a hurricane season. So I think the first season I was down here in the fall, we had a hurricane, everybody evacuates. And so there's like a 2 or 3 week disruption.
Right.
So we don't have snow, but you do have to.
You have the hurricane. And I think, you and Sid Sexton and a couple other people, when we were writing the book, Profit First for Lawn Care and Landscape Businesses, you guys were kind of in our minds in the forefront thinking of like, how did they make it through that? That's why we have that flex season or, emergency kind of fund, because you do have 2 or 3 weeks that you could go cash flow lists or, no revenue really, because of, a natural disaster or a natural occurrence. So having those funds as part of the budget or part of the cash flow allocation was definitely, part of the book because of you guys. Because I know it doesn't happen every year, but typically if it happens, it could happen 2 years back to back, and then not again for 8 years or 10 years, and then 2 years back to back. So. Okay, so you start your business up, and now how's your new business going?
So the new business, it was growing 30% a year. So the business was growing well. The first hire I made was actually an office admin person, which is interesting because that was the last hire that I'd made in my company before. I needed to hire one, but I think a lot of landscape people, and I'm so guilty of this, is you're thinking if that person's not shoveling or plowing or spraying, what are they bringing to the company and its overhead? But in reality, you need that person for the organization. You need that person for the customer service. And especially now that I was in the lawn care and irrigation service market, we're dealing with more customers and smaller ticket size. So that was my first hire, was office admin. And I had a person that came to my small office, and that worked well. Then later, she ended up retiring, and then I had to hire another one. And then that's kind of, COVID came along and different work habits came along. So then I had to figure out the world of remote office manager. And I was not prepared for all the technology that you need to make that happen. So then now you're trying to struggle with that and figure out, what do I need? I need a remote PC and Carbonite. And, I forgot to ask if this person I'm hiring has a good connection because they're talking to your customers and their phone is, going dead every 5 seconds. So that, again, a lot of learning there.
Right. Yeah.
And then I had field technicians, grew to where we had another irrigation person besides myself and another lawn care person besides myself. And I did that until it was in 2022. And I remember it was in May. I had been approached by a friend of mine, a fellow person in the industry that I know from one of my associations. And he wanted to make an introduction to a gentleman that had a irrigation franchise business. And I said, certainly, I'm open to the introduction. I was not necessarily having one of those sell your company days, where you have two flat tires and the customer yells at you and, the dog bits you on the way out to work. It wasn't a particularly bad day, but I said, yeah, I'll entertain it. So I talked to that gentleman a couple times, went and met him. And that transitioned into what I do now. So now I work with irrigation companies. I have approximately 20 folks that have their own irrigation businesses throughout the country, and I work to coach and consult them. And so a typical day for me in a week is we're having meetings, scheduled meetings and unscheduled times, and I'm helping them solve their problems, whether it be a technical issue in the field where they have water shooting in their face and broken wires and they need some assistance, to we go over their financials and we look at their P&L and we look at their balance sheet and we discuss, their business and what they need to do to grow. So that's what I'm doing now. So I ended up closing my business in 2022 and taking this opportunity here, which has been a huge transition. It was big. Again, it was one of those, you're just uneasy about it. You just, you weren't sure. It was, again, uncharted waters. But it's allowed me to share the knowledge that I have and share the mistakes that I've made and hopefully allow others to be twice as successful in half the time with half the gray hairs.
Right. So now you're working for the irrigation franchisor, and you're coaching, consulting other businesses. And what's been your big takeaway from that? Like, what's been your lesson since you've started working with the franchisor?
Well, I think when I was a small business person by myself on my island, I thought everybody knew everything, and I didn't. and I thought everybody was there, as you say, and you're never there. Nobody's ever there. So even in bigger operations, a bigger organizational chart, more, fingers out there, more locations, there's still issues that everybody is trying to solve. And most of those issues revolve around people. The successes revolves around people. The challenges revolve around people. And so that's probably, opened my eyes. I can look back now and say, look at the things that we did really well. I can look back and say it's some of the things that, we just didn't know. If we could just have a little bit more clarity, we probably could have done this better or that better. But, everybody's has that. Every business has that. You can constantly improve. And I think that's the challenge. But I really think that's the beauty of business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a conference last month, and one of the speakers was talking about, communications, talking with our clients, talking with our people. And he said most of the people who get into this industry do it because they don't like people. They want to be alone. They want to go get on their tractor or their machine or their technicians. They want to work alone, and then they're thrust into this people role, and it can be really, really overwhelming and challenging. And, it's interesting, once we learn the money part, it's easier to fix the money challenge, than it is the people challenges, right? Like I would say, do I still have money challenges in my business after 40 years? Yeah, absolutely. We have to watch every dime. We have to make sure our allocation percentages are current, and we're doing it month by month and quarter, and really follow our profit first percentages. And if they're off 1% to 3%, it shows up and we feel it. but we can manage that. And it's the people challenge that is still where the most energy goes: hiring, training, recruiting. And that could even be for new clients. It could be for our team members. It could be for our current team members. And, a big part of my role has been with more hiring, training, recruiting for our team. So and with all my focus, it's still a challenge, and that's why we developed at Green Profit Academy our leadership programs, our leadership training, because the business owners are already so overwhelmed doing everything else, the day-to-day stuff, keeping the business breathing and alive and moving forward. They don't have the time to train and move their the people forward in their business. They don't have the skill set and they don't have the energy. So that's why we developed that program. And it came from my experience seeing that, I didn't have time for that. I was 28 years into the business before I realized that you have to pay attention to the money all the time. I came from that old school. We were talking earlier before the podcast. If you're sick, you go to work. You don't feel good, you go to work. Your dog died, you go to work. You got a haircut, you went to work. You just showed up. And I thought if you had the right trucks, the right equipment, you knew about the soil and the fertilizer, and you worked hard, you would succeed. And, it took a lot of years before I found out it's the money. And most of the money made in any contracting is really through having your pricing right and estimating correctly. And then I got that dialed in. And then, now you're growing and the business is expanding. And now it's a people challenge. And you have to learn how to grow, develop people, and recruit, train, and even customers, like, educating customers on grass. And so it's a lot of work. The people is a lot of work. So quite a journey. You started, when you were a teenager or even maybe younger, and cutting grass, painting, doing whatever around the neighborhood. And then you want to buy a Jeep. So you get a job, work with another landscaper, start a business with a partner, buy your partner out, you sell that business, and then start a new business, and then close that business. And now you're working with a franchisor. So, but another big part of your real career has been your involvement in trade associations. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say that really goes back to, a lot of business owners are on an island. You feel like you're on an island because maybe your friends and your relatives, they aren't business owners and they really don't understand what you're going through day to day. And a lot of times, you're afraid to show your hand to, your local competitor or whatever. So first off, that was the beauty of being in a network or peer group, is that you can really, truthfully bring your challenges and get good help. But the other thing, the associations, that really opened my world up too. So I became involved with the Carolinas Irrigation Association in the early 2000s, and just as a volunteer. And the first thing it did for me was I got to meet people that worked at bigger companies in our area. And because I was just a small business and had started out with my $40, I'd never worked for a bigger company. Just kind of talking to those folks and getting some exposure to how they do things. Not necessarily all of it was right or all of it was right for me, but it was great exposure. We also got involved with, we went through a drought and we went through water restrictions that really hampered the whole industry. And so we had to kind of come together as a group and get involved in some legislation, go downtown. That really, where the lawmakers were, that really exposed me to yet another, world that I had not seen. The volunteer part of it, we did a lot and get involved with community colleges, and we're really trying to promote our industry to the next generation. And so all those things kind of really exposed me to people, whether they were larger companies, distributors, manufacturers, horticultural programs, teachers and students, that made me a better person, have a broader perspective, and ultimately paid back dividends to me by helping others. One of the things that we did was we have a golf tournament, and we raise money for the Irrigation Association E3 scholarship program. And this sends students to the National Irrigation Trade Show and Education event. And so being on that board, we look at applicants from all over the country apply for this, and then the winners get to go to that event. And this year, we actually had 20 people go, 3 instructors, 17 teachers. And this was the Carolinas Irrigation was a sponsor on that. The Toro Company was a major sponsor, so we definitely want to give them credit. And went there, met the students, and it's just great to see these people that are young and full of energy and excited about the industry. And I was able to connect one of those folks with one of the people that I work with, and now they actually started work with them today.
Nice.
So I think another thing that I did with that was I went to speak at a couple schools, and the horticultural teachers were really excited to have me come share my perspective as somebody in the industry. And it also made me aware of things that I didn't know, like they have a internship program. And in my mind, internship programs were only for big companies that had all this fancy paperwork and all these systems. And no, that's not necessarily the case. So I would encourage people, again, I know that in our industry, we always hear people, I need people, I can't find people. Where do I get the people? You've heard it said many times, you have to take a shotgun approach. You can't, there's no silver bullet, but being part of these associations, looking at it for the long term of, you don't just call up the local community college and say, hey, do you have anybody that can come work for me, and click and hang up and then say, oh, that didn't work. You really want to reach out. How can you help them? How can you be a resource for them? And you can make those network and connections. And the same way I made the network and connection with the person that was able to connect me with somebody to have the opportunity I have now. So I think those being part of the association, giving back, being part of, whether it's your community or your work community is very important. You got to think about it for the long haul. It's not a quick, flip the switch kind of thing, but it will pay dividends, for you and your industry and everybody involved. So that's been super rewarding for me.
Yeah, it's great to hear, connecting students and scholarships and people getting jobs. And I've always been an advocate of the local chambers, being part of those local business communities, and also the associations. I was on the Connecticut Nursery and Landscape Board for 7 years, finishing up, as its president, and then also serving on the board of our Extension Center for the University of Connecticut, the London County Extension Center Council. So, met a lot of great people, helped people kind of find resources, and it's good to be involved in the community. Same thing with joining the chambers, going to the events, meeting people, getting involved in some activities and communities that help the community, meet some really interesting people who are all pulling in the same industry and for the same community. So yeah, get out there and join and attend stuff. You don't have to attend everything, but I would recommend getting on a scholarship committee or getting on some type of a committee. I've made some really good lifelong friends in these associations.
Yeah, and I would add there's a delineation or a difference between your associations and maybe a peer group such as we were in or what you're doing at Green Profit Academy. The associations are great for meeting people and you can develop relationships, and ultimately you may create some friendships and networks where you can kind of discuss your business on more of a level of talking numbers. But that's not necessarily the place that's going to happen, nor is it going to happen with 1 or 2 meetings. So, if you have trouble with your business where you need to get your numbers right, you need to turn your business around, and you really need somebody that you can talk to in confidence to answer the hard questions, that may be more of the peer group networking situation like what you have. But the associations can be great for being in your community, again, involving students and giving back that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. Right. And they're not overly business focused. It's more like trade focused. Like the nursery industry was about garden centers and landscape design. And the chambers, really, our chamber is really more about community development, community events and stuff. So, right, not the education part of it. Definitely, in these groups, these accountability groups, network peer groups, that's when people peel back and look at P&Ls and balance sheets and personal goals. And I often wondered why there was not a lot of business talk at the chambers. And it's because most businesses, small businesses, they're really, they're focused on their industry and their trade and their craft. They're not going to talk about balance sheets and P&Ls and cash flow. It's just not on their radar. Most small businesses are just really struggling, regardless of the size or the age of the business. So that's why there's not a lot of business talk. And then there's also bigger businesses where you're getting the employees there from the banks and some of the larger corporations that are showing up, and they're not. They're there to play their role. They're not talking small business. So, if you need business coaching, definitely seek out a professional business coach to help you with those numbers and to develop, your very specific plan. That's why we wrote the book, Profit First for Lawn Care in Landscape Businesses, because it was written for our industry. And one of the things, I was on a call earlier today with a woman that owns a landscape company up in Ontario, Canada, and she was pointing out how much she appreciated that we wrote the 4 different business models in that book, where the 3-ring circus that is operating up in the north, that is open all year and does snow and all these services. And then, the one-trick pony up in the north that closes down the winter, and, the different accounts that each one of these types of models need. So make sure that you're going to work with someone that can help you specifically with your industry and your need. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Erich. I knew we would not have a lack of content to discuss, and we really just scratched the surface, really.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, we just literally gave you the kind of movie trailer version of this whole thing. Erich and I have probably had hundreds of hours of discussion over 23 years about business and struggle. And, when we started out, we were, probably in our late 30s, or early 40s when we first started working in that group. And, now we're in a different phase of life. So we have a little different perspective. But I wanted to share with people who listen to this podcast that, this career is not linear, that, you can take different paths at different times, still survive, still have a really successful career. It doesn't always have to be, one simple path. And one path can lead to another path, like it did for you, Erich.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you just keep an open mind, an open door, and make those connections, you never know where it'll take you. And things are going to be uncomfortable. Again, they say, change is uncomfortable. So if you're not a little uncomfortable, you're not growing. I would also say, looking back with the business experience, the selling businesses, buying businesses, if anybody's going through that, also the best deals are probably when both sides are slightly uncomfortable or both sides are giving up something. If it's all one-sided, all good for the, super great for the seller, not so good for the buyer, that's not going to work, or vice versa. So that would be my words of wisdom there. I went through all that learning. I didn't have any guidance. So, it was trial and error of figuring out how to navigate those waters. And I learned a lot. It can be done. again, you need to be thinking long term. They're not the most liquid, like you're not going to sell it this evening. You're not going to put it on Facebook Marketplace and it be sold by 6 o'clock.
And get cash. If you put it on Facebook Marketplace, you'll get the, hey, is that item still available? Is that item? Can you hold it for me?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and now you're living your dream. You sent me a picture, I think, at lunch one afternoon. You took a photo of the beautiful canal or waterway that you live right next to, and watching the boats go by during lunch and right out your back door. So congratulations on that success. I know that you built a beautiful new home with your wife, and you got there where you wanted to be, and it might not have been the path that you thought was going to lead you there, but you kept the diligent goal and working toward it.
Yeah, and our path is not everybody's path, and in my case, I was not holding my business for Junior to take over. So the path that I took worked for me, but it may not be everybody's path. But regardless, you want to have a good business, good numbers. You just want to be in a position where you can make those choices and not 75 years old, leaning over the counter, broke. And, that's why I'd encourage people to reach out and get the help. I mean, you helped me. You were there when you looked at my P&L the first year in the networking group. I mean, looking back, I can't figure out why anybody ever approved us for a loan for a truck. They asked for our P&L, but they obviously weren't reading it very well.
Right. They're like, oh, they turned one in. They're qualified.
Exactly.
Yeah, they didn't even read it. Yeah, they don't. Again, these corporate banks, they have to get so many loans, and they had a P&L. It must have been okay. Otherwise, why would they have given it to us?
Yeah, I think somehow they just say, can he make the payment?
Yes, that's really what it is. Can they make the payment?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you so much for sharing, Eric. I hope everybody enjoyed your story. I know I did. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And I look forward to you tuning in next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.